Please welcome to the stage Ernest Koo, Executive Director, President and CEO, Globe Telecom; Anthony Thomas, President and CEO, Mynt; Christine Violago, Country Manager, Grameen Foundation; and Bloomberg Live's Mark Dawson.
Hello. Hello, good morning, everyone. I hope you can follow that great, enthusiastic first session. So let's get going. Obviously, with Christine, Ernest, and Anthony here on stage with me, bearing in mind that BSP is watching everything that we do. So the Bloomberg Intelligence, very timely, had a report yesterday out that we think that the Philippine e-commerce gross merchandising value could surge to 10 billion a year. And obviously, Ernest, we mentioned in the room before, Philippine economy, GDP 6 to 8 growth per annum. What's the current state of play, do you think, with the Philippine digital economy? Where are we at the moment?
I think we are quickly evolving, and capabilities are slowly being built. We have the wind behind our back with the economy, like you said, growing between 6 and 8%. That's fueling significant consumer spending increases. And we are the fortunate beneficiary, being a telco. Data, as we know it, is probably moving up there in Maslow's hierarchy of needs in the Philippines. And I think we're kind of rivaling food now as far as the millennials and the Gen Zs are concerned. And so that's fueling quite a bit of growth for both telcos. But that growth actually is necessary given the fact that telco spending in the Philippines continues to grow. I think this year we will bust through the 40% mark in terms of the amount of our revenue being plowed back into infrastructure. And that's on the heels of several years of 30+% revenue to capex ratio. So what that's doing is creating the ability for most people to connect to commerce through banking digitally. Right? 4G networks are now pervasive in the country. The mobile networks in this country are evolving, and the speeds are rising as we can see them. And it's enabling a whole new set of capabilities for the rest of the population. And e-commerce happens to be one of the beneficiaries of that. Obviously, when people have the apps on their phone, they have smartphones in their hands, they're able to connect. I think the missing link that I think e-commerce still has to work on is logistics. There are some players in the Philippines that are increasingly evolving as well, foreign players, local players, and of course the last mile, which is payments. The Philippines, interestingly enough, and I think there's a lot of people, foreigners in the room, is a COD market. 90% of e-commerce transactions here happen on COD basis. And it's something that's really difficult for e-commerce companies because what it tends to be is that it's not a committed sale when they order. They can still change their mind at the end of it, and I think half the orders don't get delivered. And so that's something that we hope to enable through our GCash product that Anthony will speak about later. And I think Deputy Governor Fonasher mentioned. It's something that I think should enable individuals to actually make that commitment of payment, enable the drop-off without a face-to-face transaction happening, and many other things that can go on, right?
And the BSP, mentioned QR codes in Q3. Mentioning QR codes and other breakthroughs, what breakthroughs do you think are going to come soon that will help bump up the digital economy engagement and the interest in that?
Well, the whole purpose of why we built GCash in the Philippines, and I'm not stealing a thunder from Anthony over there, is the fact that we saw a huge problem to be solved. Globe, in general, starts off with looking at consumer issues, consumer problems, and create solutions around them. Whether it's connectivity, whether it's access to information on the internet, or lack of entertainment options, we saw that there was a need for financial inclusion and giving people access to financial services in the Philippines. And because of what we're doing in GCash, it gives people a whole new set of assets that they can now capitalize on. Work on, doing QR transactions. We have a record of what you're doing, enables us to get a credit score. Credit score equates to being able to get loans. That changes people's lives. If you're a small businessman, a farmer, for instance, in a far-flung area, you can even open a bank account with us right, through our partner CIMB Bank, in 10 minutes on your app. You can invest in a money market account. You can transfer to any bank almost in the Philippines that's part of InstaPay. And as in Deputy Governor said, they're watching if the banks are complying and playing with us in that space, because GCash unfortunately is viewed as a threat by some banks when it really is an enabler for the small people of the Philippines.
Yeah, with regards to services, obviously things like GCash, the services are there. But if we maybe go back to what Globe, your network. I mean, one of the SIM penetration is obviously very, very high. It's at about 100% in the Philippines. But sometimes people don't actually, the speeds are so low in some areas, mainly rural areas that Christine can talk about later. How can we get those network speeds up to ensure that everyone has good speeds to enable these services?
Yeah, the Philippines is a very difficult topology to actually cover 100%. As beautiful as this country is inversely correlated to how difficult it is to deploy. You've got many oceans, beaches, seas, rivers, mountains to cross to deliver these kinds of services. And there are pockets of different towns and cities that have small populations that it makes no business case for us to deliver services there, because after all, we're a public company, we have to make money, we have to reinvest that money. We've been encouraging government to actually go hand in hand with us, collaborate with us into building those facilities. So far, it hasn't materialized yet, but the government should be treating telco infrastructure just like any road. It's a road to enablement. They build farm to city roads. They should build fiber from the towns to the cities as well and allow us to lease them. All telcos who want to play should be open to everybody, because it's just as important as building that physical road, right? Because remember, the government has a different business case than we do. The case for development is different from the case of investment and returns on investment. And so that is something I think that the government should consider. We are very open to it, certainly as Globe. We are not into this exclusive, we're the only telco there. We like it to be open to everybody. We're confident that in a level playing field, we'll be able to compete effectively.
Now, we're talking today about the fourth industrial revolution, but in telcos, we're ahead of that, aren't we? We're talking about the fifth revolution, fifth generation. So how is 5G, maybe tell us briefly, how's 5G going to change the game, but also how does 5G relate to someone in rural areas who may be still on 2G?
Well, for us at Globe, the 5G technology will bring one particular thing only for now, which is fixed wireless access for the homes. In the Philippines today, there is a lack of fiber infrastructure, particularly leading into most homes, because it's very difficult to build infrastructure in this country. I'm sure anyone here who's tried to build up a business, build a convenience store, gasoline station, or a cell site will know that there's a multitude of permits required to build this. Hopefully that doing 5G and creating that wireless link from the final link, the last mile from the cell site to the home, and delivering high-speed broadband through 5G will be a game changer. Right? We won't have to build a fiber link to each and every home we want to cover. We just need to build fiber to the cell site itself. That's at least one site we can cover 300 or 400 homes. Right? Today we're doing that with 4.5G, which is our evolved form of LTE here at Globe. It's our preparation for 5G itself, and we're hitting about 10 to 15 Mbps speeds, right, to the homes. Enough to do your Netflix, your Spotify, your Disney or whatever, entertainment, YouTube on a regular basis. But if the market moves further up, we need 5G to deliver that. If they want 25 to 50 Mbps, that is the dream, and that's the hypothesis, right? That 5G will replace fiber.
Right. Do you think someone in rural areas who's on 2G, how can we get them excited about 5G?
Well, eventually, it's always leapfrogging, right? Yeah. With technology, the last guy there usually gets the newest one. And if we're able to get fiber into that particular area, then we can serve them with a 5G. And the reason they're probably on 2G is the fact that fiber and high-speed connectivity and backbone cannot get to them. Okay, good stuff. We can't mention 5G without the H word, Huawei. A lot going on with Huawei. Obviously, yourself and your chairman, you've been on the record already saying that you regard Huawei products as fine. You've got external consultants in Israel
other places that are helping with that. There's some operators in Taiwan and Japan, I believe, that are now deciding that they're not going to bring on the newest Huawei phones. What's your view on that? What's the plan for Huawei phones?
Well, for us, given the fact that we've got an extremely tight relationship with Huawei for the last 10 years, they've been very instrumental in Globe's success and ascendance to #1 status in the country. We have a lot of information that they've been giving us, pre-warnings that they've been giving us, and a repeated assurance that they will be independent of the U.S. In the very near future. Although, again, so it seems like there's a succession of bad news for them. ARM announced that they're no longer allowed to use their technology. But we've been assured for the last year now, because ever since the ZTE incident happened, we've been watching the space very closely and ensuring that our supply does continue. We've got a very extensive spending program this year, 63 billion of capex. And of course, majority of that will be on Huawei equipment. And of course, our best-selling phones right now are the Huawei phones. Okay, and so we continue to support them as well.
I hope you're following Donald Trump on Twitter. We'll find out what he does next. So it's we've spoken about the network. One of the other issues with regards to engagement in the digital economy that Anthony, or we've all mentioned previously, is the cultural aspect of it, that Filipinos, maybe compared to other countries, are maybe slower, if I can say that, in the uptake of the digital economy. Why is that? As just in case everyone's noticed, I'm not a Filipino. So explain to me, as a foreigner, what the cultural aspect is in the Philippines.
I think I'm the only Filipino in the panel.
Yeah. Yes, why do you think? What's the cultural aspect, Anthony?
So, I think it's really about delivering a value proposition that works and works easily. And I want to start with really the problem that we're trying to solve. So 2 out of 3 Filipinos don't have access to a bank account. Probably closer to 9 out of 10 don't have access to formal credit. And as we were talking about the country and the fact that we're an archipelago and 7,000 islands, there are about a third of the districts, or barangays, as we call it, that do not have a physical bank branch. Right? So given that, how does one deliver services? And of course, the opportunity that we have is that mobile is ubiquitous, thanks to Globe and the telcos. So, and with smartphone penetration increasing significantly, that's really the opportunity to solve the problem of access. Now, where we fit in is we try and make ourselves available for everyday payments. So we start with, of course, topping up your mobile phone, because that's where it all starts. And since we're in a 95% plus prepaid market, that's a great use case because people come in with high frequency. Then it's about paying the bills and about sending money. And DG Fonashare talked about InstaPay. It's not only sending money within, say, GCash, but really connecting to other banks. And since InstaPay came to the country about a year ago, so some of this has really just started. We are now close to half the system's transactions. And the only reason, I believe, is that we made it really convenient. You can do it literally in a minute or less. And we made it free. So while DG Fonashare was talking about banks participating, only half the banks actually allow sending of money. And I'm encouraged to see that she's watching, because even among the banks that are sending money, there are some that charge quite exorbitant fees for it. So for us, it's really about adoption in everyday payments, but going beyond that to lifestyle. And that's where it's QR payments for merchants. And again, we're living in a 5% credit card penetrated market. Right? That's because traditionally wallets, all you need to do is just attach your bank account, attach your credit card, and we still do that, right? But that's not enough, right? So we are enabling merchants now with QR codes, and we've been at it for about a year and a half. We have more than 50,000. In fact, we're getting closer to 70,000 now of merchant doors. And then there's, online payments, which is, as you started with, e-commerce is small but growing rapidly. And we are the only mobile wallet that's a direct payment option in Lazada, which is the country's largest e-commerce site. But it's not only e-commerce as you know it, it's also everything else. It's food delivery, it's several other categories where transactions are moving online. Movie tickets, for example. You can book a ticket down to the seat through your app and just walk through. And again, the purpose of my mentioning all of this is all of this now exists. And it's really about creating awareness and creating ease of coming onto the platform. Yeah. And that's where, again, we've spent, now, again, DG Fonashe was talking about how you would use a cash agent. But I think Ernest mentioned it. You really can set up your account and access and all of that sitting where you are with a smartphone, because we've now got facial recognition technology with strong anti-spoofing capability, so that you can actually open an account and it replaces the need for face-to-face with that technology. Yeah.
You mentioned QR codes are mentioned in the first session. Let's continue the theme. Obviously, one of your investors is Alibaba, and there's a large Chinese population in Manila. So let's be empathetic to our Chinese cousins when they come to Manila and there's no QR codes to use. How long will they and us have to wait until QR codes are that easy, or indeed the process is that seamless and easy?
You don't have to wait because Chinese tourists now can actually scan several of our GCash QR codes, which are actually a common standard with Alipay in China, so they can actually debit their Alipay wallet and spend here. But that's only for the million Chinese tourists who are coming here. We are primarily really for Filipinos, and that's where we've made that access available now. And it's not just in the big merchants. It is, and in fact, we have the odd fishbowl merchant as well, the wet market. We've been doing it, but then it's about consumer adoption. And that's where I think we still have challenges. We do a lot of activity online in digital space, but we're also trying to work with businesses and with government to disperse money into the wallet, because another big challenge is getting cash in. So that's where we've even worked with partners like Grameen Foundation and others to enable cash in ubiquitously. Because ultimately, physical cash needs to move to electronic form. Then you can do all this wonderful stuff.
And thank you for bringing Christine in for me. Let's talk about the rural on the ground aspect of all this. So, do you agree with what these two gentlemen are saying? Is that reality on the ground? How are we?
I guess it's a yes and a no. So just a brief background of what we do as a foundation. We are working in the space of financial services and digital agriculture. So all our programs have a tech component to it. And we work primarily with women groups and smallholder farmers. So what I can share this morning is the insights from our Community Agent Network program. Starting from 2015 to 2018, we studied what is the gap in terms of making sure that the underserved and unbanked population are part of the digital space. And I guess the answer there is community agents. Their first touch point actually for a digital system or payment is the load, the globe load or your smart load. And if we push that service in a sari-sari store, and that was what our goal is, onboard sari-sari stores, introduce to them a technology, either a mobile application or a box device that can cater to a range wide of services. What more can they understand in the other forms of payment? So in testing the technology, he mentioned a while ago last mile, and that's what we tried to test. What is the technology in the last mile? And this is what we figured out. The first is it must be telco agnostic. It shouldn't choose a SIM card provider because, like what you said, cell signal connectivity can be very intermittent and weak in some areas. The second is it must be agent-assisted and friendly because there are still a lot of population, especially in the agriculture sector, that may not have a mobile phone. SIM card can be high. Maybe one household can have a mobile phone. But if a mobile phone ownership itself is a barrier, then they have to have an option to go over the counter. And that's what an agent can do. Second is that it must have a receipting function to build trust. Trust in the system, in a new digital technology. You know, these low-income households, they want to make sure that their money is secure at the end of the day. And if it is SMS that will give that proof of transaction or a receipt, the better. Because if you talk to a nanay or a mother who is a budget manager, their husband is going to say, where did you put the 500 peso bill to the electric bill? Did you spend it? And she has that receipt and say, yes, I did. I paid for it today. Then good. Then off to do other business work, right? It must be portable as well. And in looking into these transactions, we found out that the top is still purchase of load. Next would be, like what you mentioned, cash-in services and remittance. An average household would do local and domestic remittance for about 3 to 4 times a month. So in the third type of transaction is actually your utility payments, your water, your government payments. And then the fourth one would be your bank transactions, like payments of credit cards. And the fifth one will be, interestingly, ticketing. So ticketing for flights, ticketing for transportation. But I would like to move into the third point, the third type of transaction, the utilities and the local cooperatives. Because usually when you go rural, the use case is what is the government payment and the local utility company that is part on your platform. If they're not part of your platform, then the use case is gone for that rural household. So, and our challenges now is when we talk to these companies, sometimes the digital platform is ready for payments, but the organization or the business itself, the local cooperatives, their core systems are not ready to integrate into other platforms. So the core banking systems and even microfinance institutions, the core accounting systems maybe, are not ready. So it is a complex issue. And in terms of, I can go on. in terms of personal usage, there is a mention of low infrastructure investments, but I think there's also this combined with low understanding in digital financial services, low financial literacy. It's also still a big problem. Mobile usage is one, but digital financial literacy is another. And I think it needs not just a private sector, a Grameen Foundation, but it needs a government-wide campaign to push for these kinds of services.
So, Anthony, how do you think you can succeed in the type of market that Christine is describing?
And it's always refreshing to sit with someone who's worked on the ground. I think the good thing is we have an answer for most of those challenges, right? We did go telco agnostic, and in fact, a fair share of our users are now not non-globe because we said we must be inclusive. We did enable a lot of the payment options. So if there are utilities in the provinces, because it's fragmented, right? We did work with aggregators to bring all of those onto the platform. We have worked consistently at building trust. It starts with 1 or 2 use cases, and that's where we've worked even with cooperatives and MFIs as well, because for us that's an efficient. So there's really a case for cooperation because it helps us get to customers at scale through the offline world because that's where they are, but bring them on because disbursements happen into the wallet through the cooperative. So that's helped as well. Of course, you get transaction confirmations, and you're able to at any point get a statement of transactions, etc. But we're going a little beyond that. We're actually, of course, we have zero fees, zero minimum balance, and it's not only you have to really give them a reason why, right? So use cases and embedding yourself in everyday payments is fine, but how do you actually lift them from their current economic condition? And that's where I think Ernest talked about, building a digital identity through the G-score, then giving them credit and starting them off with small amounts, which they can use not just to take out cash, because, I mean, while that's important, we want to make sure that spend is also responsible on, what matters, the bills, etc. But we're also now allowing people to save for the future and get a return which is higher than any other savings account in the country with zero minimum balance. And that's where we cooperate with banks. We're not trying to compete. Eventually we see ourselves as a financial services platform solving the problem of access. So they deserve that. So we're doing a lot to address it. The one place where I will concede is we're not doing too much over the counter. We really rely on the phone because that's sustainable, and of course the best experience is in the app. But we have bridged even from the phone to the app, because the moment you get to a smartphone, it's not like you download a multitude of apps. So when you start, typically in the Philippines, you start with messaging or with Facebook. Right? And that's where we've embedded ourselves as a bot, and you can start and feel Gcash for a few transactions there and then
Good
move
stuff.
on.
So, Ernest, go back to you. So it sounds like, maybe apart from some gaps that Christine sees, but it sounds like the systems and the technology is ready. It's just a case of raising the awareness, bringing more Filipinos on board. How do we do that, the private sector, and also because the BSP, she's left now, so we can talk about the government. How do we get the government to help with awareness?
Well, first of all, I'd like to say I think we need Christine here also converting our tollways, because if you look at the tollways, you talk about conversion. It's not just the people in the rural areas, right? 90% of the cars are in the cash lane, and this is Metro Manila. If you think about the challenge that faces. But for government, I think the government's doing exactly what they should be doing in terms of the BSP. They've been extremely supportive. As she said earlier, we're watching the banks and seeing what they're doing. I think the message is mostly for the financial institutions, if you ask me, is to not put up the fences around yourselves and your businesses, but to open up the businesses so that more people will benefit. As telcos, we are very open. Globe in particular, we've never been into this exclusivity type of strategy. We've always believed that competing in a level playing field is the best way to go. So protecting your turf as a business where the consumers are going the other way, I think is the surest way to fail, right? So, I mean, my ask is that these institutions engage with us. Do not see us as a threat, because today we serve customers you don't even serve, right? And so hopefully that one day that tide will turn, and this will become the way of doing banking in the Philippines.
In the Philippines, the banking investment of banks into their technology is quite low compared to other countries. Do you think the banks are scared of your technology prowess? I mean, why do you think that they're not opening up?
Well, I mean, as Anthony said, we can be an enabler of banks. If you play with a company like ours, we can help you enable yourselves and get you to the next generation of banking platforms. If you with advice and so on and so forth, right? As I said earlier, we're the last guys in. We've got the best technology. We're also enabled by what I consider to be the best technological partner in the industry, which is Alipay. We've got this distinct advantage of being able to roll out the microservices that they have. They can choose among a menu of services available in their app and bring it to market here in the Philippines very, very quickly.
Yeah. Now, just finish off with a broader question. I mean, myself, I've got degrees in politics. So when talking about AI and how that's going to revolutionize the workforce, I get worried about, because I don't know how to code, unfortunately. So the digital economy, Filipino economy going to transform. Are there the jobs? Are they going to be created that are good for the young Filipinos now, or does there need to be a reform in education, more reskilling, skilling? What's your view on jobs and how the economy is going to transform?
Well, certainly it is a threat for one of the largest industries in the Philippines, which is BPO. But I've also had the pleasure of working in industry for 11 years in my past, and I've seen the need to upskill, regardless of whether AI is there or not. Upskilling and moving up the value chain in terms of services being offered, I think is a very critical piece, because aside from AI, there is the commoditization aspect of whatever you're doing. I mean, when call centers came into fruition in the Philippines, the rates were extremely high, right? And I happened to help found one of the first, if not the first call center in the Philippines serving the US. And we enjoyed a differentiated program, differentiated agents, and soon our prices start to go down. So you have to move up the value chain. So there will always be something that will threaten the business. And if you stay where you are, if you stay at the status quo, you keep it too long, it's a sure death knell for the company.
And Christine, digital economy, jobs, how do we get the rural population engaged and getting more wealthy?
Well, first is to continue to educate them. We're doing what we call a campaign called Women Link, and it's a very basic campaign of sending SMS messages to women to register women to receive financial tips and an action-oriented message to drive the usage to digital platforms. That's a step. But going back on the education, I think I'd like to stress on that because the curriculum in the Philippines, it has to coincide with a fast pace of changes in technology, and that must be reviewed in investment. Imagine the digital natives today working in the workforce in the next 5 to 10 years, sorry. I can imagine how much creativity they can bring to the table. I have an 18-year-old brother, and in high school, he learned to code and create an app. When I heard this, I said, "You're my competitor now in the business." I mean, imagine these kinds of young people that can bring innovation to a whole nother level. And we see this now happening in the urban areas. And I can't wait for other low-income households to experience that technology and be blown away by the systems. Yep. It's not a threat. It's to inspire them and to work harder and to be part of this digital space.
And Anthony, finish us off, please. So in the next 5 years, 10 years, if we come back on stage, obviously looking a bit older, where will the Philippines be in terms of the digital economy? Will we be further up, leading ASEAN maybe? How do you foresee the future?
Absolutely. I'm very optimistic. Of course, where I sit, I have to be. But I think just enablement now has multiplied capability, right? So, I mean, if you can set up a business straight off, the gig economy is live and well. You can easily accept payments and pay other people. You know, a lot of the normal pain points which you shouldn't be facing are now being solved. So that should allow that multiplier effect for you to be so much more productive and really focus on what you want to deliver to your customers. So why 5 years? Sooner. We should be a lot more, we should be in a much better place in the next 3 years, I would say.
Good stuff. Well, thank you for your time. And sounds like overall the technology's there, but we need to just onboard more Filipinos to get involved in the digital economy. So thanks for your time. And
thank you.